Welcome to the podcast. Today we're diving into one of the most debated global shifts in recent history, the transition from Western dominance to a new, more balanced world order, as argued by Kishore Mahbubani.
Ah, yes. This idea that the West's days of unchallenged power are dwindling while Asia, particularly China and India, are taking center stage. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. Um, Mahbubani frames it using a lot of irrefutable data, showing that, well, the East is not just catching up, but redefining how global power
Right.
is distributed. I mean, think about it. Centuries of Western supremacy may be coming to an end.
And it's not just rhetoric, is it? The lecture emphasizes how Western institutions like the UN and the IMF are struggling to adapt to the shifting realities.
Precisely. It's like the world's core. Like these institutions were built in a very different era. They were designed for one kind of global order, one where the US and its allies set the rules. But today, the power dynamics have fundamentally changed.
And Kishore really brings out the point that this isn't merely an economic shift, but a complete reordering at a political and cultural level as well.
Exactly. It's like a tectonic shift beneath the global landscape. The lecture illustrates that the West might have a view that's a bit myopic, seeing things only from their historical context, while the true huge transformation is often invisible from that perspective.
Indeed. And that invisibility partly comes from how intertwined global economies have become, right? When you look at it, even events like trade wars or political upheavals are signals of an evolving order.
Right, exactly. And Mahbubani points out that key players like China and India aren't just emerging, they're already shaping agendas. It's like, one could say that the East isn't waiting for permission, it's actively redesigning the global game rules.
Yeah. There's also a striking element about how he challenges traditional narratives. He throws in examples of leaders such as Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi, who are central to this new rebalancing.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because while Western analysts might be hailing past glories, Mahbubani uses stunning data to argue that modern geopolitics is in a different ballgame, like it's a masterclass in understanding power shifts.
True, true. But don't you think, some might argue that this perspective overlooks, say, internal weaknesses within Eastern powers too?
That's a fair challenge, actually. Right, there's definitely a conversation to be had about that. While Mahbubani is optimistic about the capabilities of, say, China and India, he also hints that with great power come great responsibilities and risks.
Exactly. It's not a smooth transition. The shift implies massive recalibration of global institutions that embrace more multipolar influences. How do these bodies reform when the balance has shifted so dramatically?
Yeah, and that's where the lecture gets even more intense. He unpacks the idea that institutions like the IMF, established in post-WO3 Western primacy, are now struggling to represent the interests of emerging powers. It's
Right.
almost like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
And then there's the whole idea of narrative control. Traditionally, the West had the narrative about what progress meant. Now, Eastern powers are crafting their own stories of development.
Like when our guest talks about how the common perception of democracy or governance is being reconsidered on a global scale. It's not about ideology, it's about power, influence, and survival.
Exactly. And it's almost ironic in that in attempting to claim their evolving power, the West seems to cling to outdated ideas. That's a point I tend to challenge. Do you really think traditional liberal values can easily adapt to this multipolar accommodation, or is there inherent resistance?
Oh, I agree with your skepticism. I think Mahbubani subtly challenges that notion. It's like, you're not simply adapting old frameworks, you're creating entirely new paradigms based on, well, contemporary realities. And this process can be painful for any institution used to unilateral dominance.
Exactly, and that disruption is evident, especially when you consider how the West reacts. There's a sort of denial, almost like a clinging to past superiority.
It's almost like an identity crisis for the West. It's comfortable in its historical role, but in a world where power is more diffused, that comfort zone simply doesn't exist anymore.
Yep, it's like when you suddenly realize you've been using the wrong map all along. And the new map, crafted by Eastern perspectives, reveals territories and alliances that were pretty much hidden before.
Right, exactly. And this reorients not just economics, but cultures, values, even security alliances. The lecture also touches on how alliances like NATO are being pushed to redefine themselves. It's a complete reordering of global order.
And it's intriguing how Mahbubani uses historical context to show that power shifts aren't entirely new. They happened before, though perhaps not with this magnitude and speed.
Yes, he draws historical analogies, comparing it to other great shifts in history. It's like, saying, remember when empires fell and new ones rose? Only this time, the timeline is compressed.
Right, and it makes you wonder about the future. How will global diplomacy adapt? Can traditional powers reinvent themselves sufficiently?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While the lecture doesn't provide all the answers, it does force us to rethink our assumptions about global stability and progress.
Absolutely.
It's both an analytical tool and a call to action for policymakers.
And there's also this underlying tension in the narrative. It's like the emotional toll of power shifting is as significant as the structural changes.
Exactly. When power shifts like this, you see not just international realignment, but also domestic unrest. People's sense of identity, their trust in established orders, it all gets shaken up.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting how that tension might lead to an eventual pushback from traditional powers? It's like a natural cycle of resistance and adaptation.
Indeed, it's almost cyclical, history repeating and reinventing itself. And while some argue that the West is doomed to decline, I think Mahbubani hints at a more nuanced future. It might be less about outright downfall and more about transformation.
Right, I hear you. True, but I'd respectfully challenge that a bit. Is transformation enough if the West loses its global leadership role entirely? What does that mean for global governance?
That's a fair challenge. I think Mahbubani suggests that global governance might need to evolve into a more pluralistic system where leadership is shared rather than monopolized. It's less a zero-sum game and more a complex web of interdependencies.
Yeah, it almost sounds like we're moving towards a shared stewardship of global affairs. But is that realistic given the current geopolitical climate?
Well, realistically, it's messy. Innovation in diplomacy might not come overnight, but the data, the trends, they're persuasive. The global balance of power is shifting, and ignoring that would be essentially living in a fantasy.
Right. And as someone who tracks international relations closely, I see the implications already. You have rising economies reshaping trade, and then you also see cultural narratives being rewritten.
Exactly. And it's not just economics either. Think about security alliances. With events like conflicts in Ukraine and shifting stances among major powers, the old order of us versus them is breaking down into something far more complex.
True, and that complexity is where new opportunities and challenges emerge. The lecture really drives home that it's not just a shift in power, but a rebalancing in how all nations see their roles.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that history is dynamic. The roles we once thought were fixed are now as malleable as clay, ready to be remolded according to new economic realities, political ambitions, and cultural influences.
Right, exactly. So, wrapping it up, we're really looking at a future where global leadership is less about a singular hegemon and more about interconnected, often competing centers of influence. It's a challenging yet exciting evolution.
Absolutely. And as we look ahead, knowing these shifts can empower us, whether policymakers, business leaders, or citizens, to better navigate the complexities of our global stage. Thanks for the great discussion.
Thanks indeed. This was an eye-opening conversation.